everybody, and nice to see you again for this week. For today's books, I'm going to tell you a books about the famous band, and this is really famous, so I think you know. Yes, it's the Beatles. So for today, I'm going to tell you the Beatles. And I'll start about the characters. So we're going to read that. So let's start with John Lennon. So he was born on October 9, 1940. So that was World War II. He was dragging in Europe, Liverpool, England. His mother, Julia, went to the hospital and gave birth at 7 in the morning. As he arrived, the walls of the hospital shook from falling bombs. At first, John lived with his mother and grandparents. John's father, Alfred, worked on a ship, and so he had to write for months, and he never come home for John's, and they separate. They're not separate, but he never come home like he promised, but he didn't keep his promise. So yeah. And then so his mother gave him to Mimi, Aunt Mimi. John was a happy boy, and Mimi gave John a dog named Sally. And Mimi gave him a lot of books too. Along with reading, John liked to make monsters and skeletons out of paper and paste them over his bed. Julia acted more like a buddy than a mother. She loved to tell jokes, make funny faces, and sing. She taught John how to play the banjo, an instrument similar to a guitar. Aunt Mimi had a lot of rules. She expected John to come home after school to do homework. She often had good reason to get mad at John. He was smart, but he didn't work hard. He did well only in our class. So here, you see that? That's John. And John's favorite singer was Elvis Presley, And John's like his hair, Elvis Presley hair, and when Elvis sang, he swayed his hips. Girl went crazy. Boys admired him. John started dressing like Elvis, right down to the greasy hair, and he also decided to play the guitar. But Auntie Mimi wanted John to take violin lessons, piano lessons, and then soon John formed his own band at school. It was called the Quarrymen. To the Beatles fans, Paul McCartney was also known as the cute one. As a kid, Paul was chubby. His brother Michael picked on him and called him Fatty. Paul was born on June 18, 1942. His mother, Mary, had a private hospital room for poor women. Usually had to share a room with other brand new moms, and the McCartney family didn't have much money, but Mary worked as a nurse, so the hospital treated her like a family. Paul was a pretty good kid. His grades were good, especially in Latin, and he made a lot of friends. He liked to draw and write. He liked girls and breakfasts. Nothing. And he also loved music. Paul also liked literature, a black singer. Literature wore bright makeup, act while on stage, and sings songs called Tutti Frutti and Good Golly Miss Molly. Naturally, little Richard didn't just sing, he screamed. When he played the piano, little Richard got so excited he had to stand up. Sometimes he even kicked the piano bench away. Paul listened to much music when he was a kid. His father, Jim, played piano and once led a group called Jim Mac's Jazz Band. Jim set up the radio in Paul's room so he could listen to music as he fell asleep. Paul's uncle gave him a trumpet, but Paul's favorite instrument was the guitar. Why? Because Elvis played one. John guitar made for right-hand people. Guitars. Paul, I just like John is so easy for me to read. So I think that's guitars were made for right-hand people, but Paul was left-hand, so he had to string up down to play it. And boy did play it. The minute he got the guitar, that was it, said Michael, Paul's younger brother. He was lost. He didn't have time to eat or drink about anything else. He played it while he sat on the toilet and while he was in the bath. He played everywhere, Michael said. And then Michael's mom get ill and she have cancer, had breast cancer, and probably wouldn't live long. Mary cried when she found out, but she didn't tell her son. Oh, that's so sad. And then she died on October 31, 1956. Paul was only 14 years old. Did I forgot to tell you the one part, guys, on John Lennon? Yeah, I forgot to tell you that John Lennon's mother have a hit by a car, have an accident and died, and he wrote a song, Julia, about her. He wrote a song. John Lennon wrote a song. And then now back to Paul, and then Paul turned his sadness into music. He wrote his first song and called it I Lost My Little Girl. So sad. And then Ringo is the oldest Beatle, but now he's still living. But it's sad that in the end, two people died. No, who's there, but so sad. I don't know why Ringo is the oldest one. He lived for he's still living. I mean that. And he was born on July 7, 1940. The first and only child of Ellis and Richard Starkey. He was named after his father, although his father left Ringo when he was only 3 and rarely returned to visits. As a boy, Ringo was lonely. Ellis would watch her son stare out the window, wishing he had a brother or sister. And then at age 6, Ringo got sick, and he got really sick, and then he had to go to the hospital. But after operation, Ringo didn't wake up. He was in a coma. For 10 weeks, Ringo's body stayed asleep, and when he did wake up, he still felt sick. So he ended up staying in the hospital for a whole year until he was well again. When Ringo was 13, he caught a cold that got much worse. He had trouble breathing and had to go to the hospital again. This time, he stayed for 2 years. In the hospital, Ringo learned how to play drums. Ringo had always been interested in drumming. He used to tap along to the rhythm of any song he heard. Tap, 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 tap. And when Ringo went home, he built his own drum set out of metal cookie containers, and he used small pieces of firewood for his sticks. He was so creative, And then Ringo find a job because Ringo wasn't in school anymore. I don't know what that happened. Didn't tell. So Ringo had to find a job. His name is Ringo Starr. He worked on a train, carrying messages back and forth to people. There were no such thing as cell phone back then. He served drinks on boat. He got a job fitting pipes together so water could move through them. Even he made enough money, Ringo knew he needed more out of life. He just wasn't happy. When Ringo turned 18, his mother bought him a real set of drums. It was the best gift she could have given him. He formed a band. They were called Eddie Clayton's Skiffle Group. And George Harrison is the happiest childhood of the Beatles. He didn't have the sadness of losing his mother as Paul and John did. He didn't get sick like Ringo. And he was born on February 25, 1943. Harold, his father, drove a bus. Louise, his mother, taught ballroom dancing, but little George wasn't interested in dancing. He wasn't interested in music either. He was a quiet boy. Music came into George's life when he was 14. That's when he heard a British singer named Looney Dogan. The music Looney Dogan played was similar to rock and roll, except it was faster. George loved the sound of it and begged his mother to buy him a guitar. She finally agreed and bought one for $5. George taught himself how to play. He practiced so much that the tips of his fingers started to bleed. Soon he wanted a better guitar, an electric one. An electric guitar, much louder because it's plugged in. The sound runs through the speaker. So I can show you a picture. And here's when he practiced the guitar. George had formed a band with one of his older brother, Peter. They called themselves the Rebels and played their first show as a club in Liverpool. Soon after, George was on a bus and met Paul. They started meeting at George's house to practice music together. While Paul loved to sing, George was more interested in playing the guitar. And now, start to bat. John's band, the Quarrymen, got its name from his school quarry bank. The Quarrymen played their first gig in summer of 1957. That was also when Paul saw John's band play at a local church. It was the warm summer day. John stood up on the stage with his guitar and sang la 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 la. With his guitars, Paul was very impressed by what he heard. He went up to John after the show and said that he had also played music. Then he grabbed someone else's guitar and played a song to prove it. He wanted to ask Paul to join his band. Although he worried that fans would like Paul more, but John decided that Paul would help the band. They played their first show together on October. Paul showed John the song he wrote after his mother died. John went home and wrote a song and called Hello, Little Girl. So there's the picture. I think that's Paul, and yes, that's right. Paul took his new friend George to meet John. George was only 15 at that time. Too young, thought John, to be in the band. John was 18, but Paul convinced John to let George in. Now the all knew was a drummer. At first they found a drummer named Colin, but he quit after a fight with John and Paul. Then drummer number 2, Tommy Moore, had to leave the band because his girlfriend wanted him to get a paying job. He went to work in a bottle factory. Then they took a guy named Pete Best. He was son of a local club owner. John convinced one of his friends, Stu Cliff, to take a bass so he could join. Stu bought a bass guitar and tried to learn how to play it. He didn't stay around very long, but he did do one important thing. It was an idea to change the band name from the Quarrymen. In February 1960, the band was remain the Beatles. In those days, when the Beatles came calling, all the club owners saw their 5-square-foot teenager in a beat-up leather jacket. At first, their music wasn't good. It was their fault. It wasn't their fault. Stu was learning how to play bass, and he didn't really want to be in the band anyway. He wanted to be a painter. John never took guitar lessons, so he still made a lot of mistakes. Same thing to George and Paul, and the only reason Pete was drummer was because he owned a drum set. In 1959, they got their first steady jobs. A club owner in Hamburg, Germany, visits England. He was hoping to find a group of cheap young rock and rollers. He made an offer to the Beatles. Hamburg was far away in another country, but the club owner promised the Beatles to place to sleep and a regular paycheck, and their even own dressing room. Naturally, the boys were excited. Their parents, however, were not. Aunt Mimi always had to propose John's dream of playing music. Now she insisted that John stay in art school. Paul's father also put up a fight. He worried that Paul wouldn't get enough to eat if he went to Germany. But like Jimmy, he wouldn't really stop his son. John and Paul were 18 and old enough to do what they wanted, and they wanted to go to Germany. The club was a dirty, smelly place. Called the Indra. Their dressing room was actually a public bathroom. They slept on a small bed sat behind the screen of a local movie theater. After playing all night, they couldn't even sleep the next morning. The sound of the movies woke them up. Performing on stage wasn't easy either. In the past, their gigs lasted an hour at the most. In Hamburg, they were on stage for 8 hours, but all practice didn't help make them better musicians. And sometimes they felt tired and grumpy too. And sometimes the fans got too much beer and got in fights. They threw chairs and swung from the lights hanging down from the ceiling. As time passed, the Beatles became more popular and did some shows at bigger clubs. They also made a lot of friends with our school kids who gave the boys advice on how to wear their hair. The Beatles decided to like this better than using the grease. This new hairstyle become the, they did that hairstyle, but I like the grease one. It's more beautiful. Become what they call the Beatle mop top. After 4 months, through the Beatles had enough of Germany, except for Stu. He had fallen in love and wanted to stay in Germany. Everyone else went home to Liverpool, England. They had no trouble getting work now. They even attracted the attention of a local businessman named Brian Epstein. Brian was from a wealthy family. He wanted to manage a rock band. The Beatles trusted him. Brian had different ideas about what boy needed to do to make it big. He told them no more eating, drinking on stage, no more leather jacket. Instead, they could wear matching suits and ties. The band agreed to all of it if Brian would let them do a favor. They didn't want Pete to play drums anymore. They wanted some better guy named Ringo Starr, who was in another band. John and Paul were too scared to kick Pete out. He had been their friend, and they didn't want to hurt Pete's feelings. So they had Brian to do it. Pete never forgave them for not telling him personally. By 1963, the 4 members of the band were in place: John, Paul, George, and Ringo. At the start of 1963, the Beatles was still playing small club or performing as a nobody act for other band. Then that March, their first single came out in England. It was called Please Please Me, and it became the big hit on the British charts. That's a list of best-selling records even on their early song. They had two main singers, John and Paul, who knew to perform harmonies together. They were so popular that fans chased them everywhere. A newspaper in England came up with a way to describe the excitement, Beatlemania. Let me drink some water. In the United States, the Beatles were still unknown. Their first song in the U.S. was such a flop that their record company got rid of them. So they signed with Capitol Records. When Capitol was slow to put a new song, Brian got a phone and yelled at the manager. He said, "I Want to Hold Your Hand" would be a big hit. Brian was right. The song went to number 1. So here you can see the picture. That's I think all the fans, girls everywhere, and over there is the Beatles are running. On February 7, 1964, Beatlemania hit America that when the plane arrived at Kennedy Airport in New York City, containing 4 nervous young men, John, Paul, George, and Ringo were coming to America for their very first time. They had never been rock stars from England before. Brian didn't have any doubts. He kept telling everybody that the band was going to be huge. And as soon as they got off the plane, the Beatles proved Brian right. Thousands of screaming teenagers showed up to greet them at the airport. The Beatles were cute. Girls pushed themselves up against the fence, separating them from the airplane. They cried when John, Paul, George, and Ringo walked out the plane. Some of the fans even passed out when the Beatles waved. That's so funny. 2 days later, the Beatles played 5 songs on the Ed Sullivan Show, and that day they made history. More than 73 million people across the country watched. And in 1964, the Beatles makes their their first movie, A Hard Day's Night. A lot of action in the movie showed the band running away from fans. It was the big hit. And they were still young and experienced, thought sometime they made a mistake. John once told a reporter that the Beatles were more popular than Jesus. Right now, many people were deeply offended. Some radio stations held protests with big bonfire. People were invited to throw Beatles albums onto flames. John quickly apologized, but the experiments jinxed the band. They had to watch what they said to behave. Being rockstar wasn't easy. When they weren't recording the new song, the Beatles packing their suitcase to head to the next concert. There wasn't many time to rest. In 60 days, in 1964, they played 53 concerts, each in different cities in the United States. When they were on tour, the Beatles had to leave their families behind. John found this especially hard. He had a wife and a baby son. John barely had a chance to see them. But if they didn't play any more concerts, blah blah blah. But the Beatles had another side. They were tired of traveling instead of sightseeing. They spent most time running away from fans who wanted to hugs, kiss, and autographs. They couldn't even go to movies or restaurants anymore. And there was a very funny thing that when the Beatles were driving cars, and then luckily John, Paul, and George and Ringo had faked them out. The boys had sneaked away secretly, hiding from inside an ambulance. Even performing a track now, they were no more shows at small clubs. The Beatles were filling baseball stadiums with fans as the four of them stood on a small square stage as millions. 50,000 people would be screaming so loudly. But the fans going to their concert only want to hear the old hits. The song they knew the words to. Against Brian's wishes, the Beatles began to spend more time in the studio. The early songs had been very simple. She Loves You and I Want to Hold Your Hand were fast, happy tunes with words that everybody understood. Then the newer songs were very different. The first dramatic jinx came on yesterday, a song Paul said he heard in the head during a dream. The song is sad about lost love. Paul's voice supported by a quartet of classic music yesterday became one of the group's most popular songs when released in 1965. Brian kept forcing them to go back out on tour. The Beatles tried, but it didn't work. They were unhappy and decided once for all to stop doing the concert tours. The last concert came on August 29, 1966 in San Francisco. Brian was upset. He was worried that the rock band didn't play concert could not stay popular. You see the picture? That Brian or somebody outside. In 1967, a year after quitting the road, the Beatles released what many people think is their greatest album. I can't read the first word. It's a CGT. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band that made Pepper so special is how Beatles used so many different styles of music on one album. John wanted his new wife, Yoko Ono, at the recording studio all the time. The others didn't want her there. During the recording of Let It Be, Yoko sat next to John. She listened to the band discuss how to play the music. When there was a disagreement, she would whisper to John's ear or gave her opinion to the group. She loved John and always took his side. The other Beatles thought that outsider, even wives, didn't belong to the studio. Let It Be turned to the big mess. By the end of the Beatles were barely talking to one another. They couldn't finish the album. When the movie were released, almost no one went to see it. The Beatles didn't have even shows to opening. In 1970, and they were no longer a band, but they were still musicians and still famous. Paul wanted to spend time with his family. He and his wife, Linda, whom he married in 1969. And they bought a farm in Scotland. They had 3 children. One daughter, Stella, grew up to be a famous fashion designer. Paul made an album called McCartney. He played every instrument himself, including the guitar, drums, and piano. And he taught Linda to play the keyboard for his band. And then he also have a band named Wings. George and Ringo were also busy making music. Paul and John had always been the lead of songwriter in the Beatles. George and Ringo wasn't allowed to sing much. Now they could make their own album.